I'd like to thank all the KissFAQ YouTube members for their support of the channel. It's the support of paid members who allow us to keep the channel ad-free as much as possible and provide motivation for creating content such as this. I hope you all enjoy. Welcome to an audio Odyssey. The book of the same title was originally published a decade ago, and in the time since, much additional documentary evidence and information regarding Kiss in 1981 has been uncovered. Since a second edition of that book seems unlikely, I thought that it would be interesting and a fun challenge to create an Elder supercut, a multi-part audio documentary of sorts exploring varying facets of the Elder's genesis and era. The goal is to keep the assorted chapters concise and focused and purposeful, both in standalone and serialized contexts. In this episode, the songs for music from the Elder start taking shape. The basic story treatment provides some hints to potential inspiration for the basic story of the Elder, an orphan. At the time of Kiss's recording Conundrum, there was something fresh in the industry consciousness, and likely Gene's, as someone who was increasingly visible on the art scene of New York City at the time. It was the musical Annie, based on the 1920s comic strip. The Broadway production had opened in April 1977 and ran for 6 years. Winning 7 Tony Awards, its popularity resulted in a movie version, coincidentally filming during 1981.
The sun'll come out tomorrow.
Now that was an orphan story that resonated with the public imagination. What better protagonist than a downtrodden orphan? It's a common character type and story device, nothing spectacularly original. Still, it's a cliché trope, often overused, abused, and predictable, when done poorly. Of course, the opposite of that is that it's a worthy character convention when done well. The question is whether that orphan status is integral to the story, or whether it's a lazy sympathetic label simply assigned to avoid character development or definition. And then you have the guru, the guide, with Morpheus, who could equally be Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda, or any number of superhero comic sci-fi characters that fulfill a mentor role, active or passive.
He is the one.
Such character types provide useful narrative purposes, filling in or condensing elements of the story and guiding the protagonist on his journey. The Elder themselves were inspired by the Watchers.
Hear my words, you of Earth. I come from a world so far from here that you do not even suspect its existence. Our entire home planet is one vast, gigantic computer. My people roam the entire known universe, watching, observing other worlds. We have seen planets where life evolved from seas of molten metal. We have witnessed the death of worlds which were older than your entire galaxy. And worst of all, we have seen once noble races turn savage and warlike with the passing of time. A fate which your own foolish breed seems headed for. But during all the ages, we have done nothing but watch. Never have we interfered. Never have we made our presence known.
Golgotha and dragons seem to be flippant devices in the story treatment, serving no purpose other than appearing to be a concatenation of other creative property ideas ripe to be shoehorned into this construct. They add something mysterious and an air of the grandiose to the story. Perhaps the most ironic borrowed plot element in the story is the president being replaced by a double or clone. That screams a sequel, or at least a cheap knockoff, to Devereaux's devious plan and army of animatronic minions in Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Devereaux!
There'd also been several treatments of that concept previously, but The Kidnapping of the President, a movie starring Hal Holbrook and William Shatner, hit the theaters in 1980, and of course Invasion of the Body Snatchers, being based on the plotline where alien duplicates replace humans, had been released in 1978. It could have inspired either The Elder, or Kiss Meets the Phantom for that matter. To be fair to those involved, it's probably a generic enough idea to simply be another coincidence. As the songs and script treatment took shape, there was clearly elements and themes that carried over from Gene's initial Beverly Hills Hotel brainstorm notes, but very little else. Gene started fleshing out other song placeholders for general story themes and character traits. It seems that the concept was a jigsaw puzzle of song types. Some of these included love, power, loss, pain, Morpheus, orphan, plus the chant narrative, and of course, Joshua's song. The starting point was very generalized. By detailing a specific Joshua song, it's impossible not to draw a possible Ezran connection, with Josh being the name of one of his sons. Additionally, in the Old Testament, Joshua was Moses' successor, the commander who led the Israelites into the Promised Land after Moses' death. As leader of the Israelites, he oversaw the division of the land among the tribes, fulfilling God's promise to Abraham. Joshua is portrayed as a faithful, courageous, and devoted servant of God. In the Elder, Joshua is essentially being guided by the hand of an unknown force to perform similarly great deeds. Okay, not similarly, but great within the scope of the story, nonetheless. Warning alarms sound at drawing too many parallels with that particular biblical source. Interestingly, Bob was described in an April 1981 Toronto Star piece, secondhand of course by an unnamed friend, as a homebody who doesn't like leaving the city to record, a devout Jew who keeps the Sabbath and worries about the moral implications of the music he produces. Gene had also attended yeshiva in his youth, and potentially some of the Elder's roots may simply have been old school in part, from his studies of the Talmud and Torah. Quickly returning to that warning siren, many story themes are simply timeless. It seems logical to assume that much of June into July was spent refining the concept around which the songs would be constructed, with writing taking place concurrently as coherent themes emerged. Toward the end of June, some members of the music press were inquiring whether Kiss were even recording an album. Ida Langsam had received multiple calls from hit parader's Charlie Crespo. He went so far at one point to admitting confusion about Kiss's activities, having seen multiple members about the town. Gene had attended Lena Horne's benefit for the Citizens Committee for the Children of New York with Miss Ross on June the 10th. Paul was also regularly seen on the art scene with new beau Patti LuPone. Ida explained to Crespo that recording had started in Toronto but moved to New York. Charlie was unsatisfied with that explanation and indicated that he was going to start directly engaging any band members he encountered in public, since she had to date declined his request for interviews. Hit Parader magazine remained interested in Kiss content, having run Gene and Peter favorite album features. In early June, they'd solicited one from Eric while scheduling Paul and Ace's previously completed ones. On June the 23rd, Ida sent a memo to the band members warning them about Charlie and letting them know how she'd handle the situation to ensure that they weren't left unaware should they encounter him in public. Ida continued to look for friendly press outlets for fluff pieces, and on June the 29th suggested band members participate in Playboy magazine's Ears of the Star monthly column. Press interviews were also scheduled with members of the Mexican press on June the 27th. La Pantera 590 Radio, Radio Exitos 790, and Radio Capital 1260 were expected, chaperoned by Polygram Mexico. Immediately following, the photo session for the then proposed album cover with Barry Levine was scheduled to begin. Still, the group's business needed to take place, and Bill Aucoin had to adjust activities according to the anticipated timeline for a prospective September 1981 album release. At that point, he still had to plan for a potential tour, and during the last week of June, he flew to Los Angeles to review Kiss's merchandise and licensing agreements. 20th Century Fox Licensing Corporation continued to handle Kiss's licensing and were instructed to investigate ways to both consolidate and expand licensing worldwide. The September album release was clearly becoming more and more over-optimistic considering the challenges the project faced. Rick Alibert and Bill were ultimately forced to notify affiliates of a new delivery date of October the 1st, promising them they'd still receive all artwork 60 days prior to the unscheduled release date to begin their promotional efforts. Rick had explained to Polystar's Akio Onodera on June the 26th, reasons for the delay is that Kiss are trying to do the best album possible. They are currently undertaking with Bob Ezrin the writing and production of a concept album, which naturally takes more time than we originally planned for. This pushed out potential promotional activities in Japan until after the release, and Bill also informed Mr. Udo that any touring plans would have to be delayed similarly. It was the second year running that a return to Japan seemed unlikely. Australia remained desperate for product. The VP of Polygram Australia's Legal and Business Affairs had agreed on July the 24th to not release their proposed best-of album for the rest of 1981, if the studio album was delivered by September. The caveat in that arrangement was that they reserved the right to release such a compilation during the contract term instead. They sent their proposed list of song selections to Howard Marks to start the contractually agreed approval process for those titles. If avoiding confusing the market with multiple competing products was the goal, then Glickman Marks won the immediate battle. Unfortunate for the Australian affiliate, Aucoin was unable to provide any advanced product for their participation in a national sales conference that ran September the 2nd through 5th. Rick Alibert attempted to soften that blow, suggesting that album art and new band photos might be available in time. Might be. By that time, the September deadline had been moved. The optics of the mess probably don't do justice to what was occurring in the background, and the increasing pressures on all parties involved. In hindsight, noting what occurred with the Kiss Killers release the following year, it might have made sense for Kiss to avail themselves of a contractual stipulation. Artists shall have the right, with the company's written approval, to deliver to the company, at any time during the term, one live LP consisting of recordings of artists' concert performances, whether or not containing previously recorded sides. Sure, such a release wouldn't have counted towards their contractual obligation, but it could have taken the pressure off staggering from one missed deadline to the next. That there were multi-tracks recorded and overdubbed from the 1980 Australian tour could have been condensed into some viable product, with little effort. As usual, hindsight is 50-50, or completely irrational. Trying to meet the intended release date, parties were informed that August the 15th was the deadline for the album art to be completed. Rick was also trying to set up a promotional tour of Europe, with a potential gap in the band's schedule allowing a visit between October the 4th through the 13th. It's clear that European partners were looking at potential video opportunities during that visit. By early July, Carl Glickman was getting concerned about the seeming lack of musical activities by the group. On July 12th, he sent a somewhat terse memo to Bill Aucoin noting, "I suggest someone approach Bob Ezrin to get a definitive set of dates for recording and/or mixing so we can book studio time accordingly. If this waits until the last minute, you can rest assured we will end up paying top dollar." Other than the financial impact resulting from a potential scramble for studio time, the tone suggests that meaningful recordings had not yet commenced by that date. Certainly, Gene was scheduled to fly to Toronto on July the 15th, staying at Bob Ezrin's home, indicating ongoing writing or potential material review and revision. The idea for interstitial narrations had clearly been established by the end of July. A July 22nd memo noted that casting for the role of the narrator, Ancient of Days role, was underway. Burgess Meredith seems to have emerged as a favorite for the story's narrator role by August the 6th, with either John Huston or Louis Gossett Jr. portraying the role of one of the Ancients. From the language style Morpheus used in the script treatment, it's not too difficult to see Mickey from Rocky reading it.
What's cat? There ain't no cats. There's no cats. Now he will beat you uglier than you are now.
Bill was also urgently starting the hunt for the first single's video director and production company, with Phonogram requesting a video in conjunction with the single release. It was something tangible, and a prerequisite to shop the group for potential appearances on European television shows. Most outlets wouldn't even consider them without some idea of their planned image and style of the music to gauge suitability for their audiences. But first, Kiss needed to record something, though Bill may already have had some inkling about suitable songs for use as a single. As of August the 3rd, efforts were being made to line up appearances on European TV shows, and the German program Disco was scheduled for October the 8th or 9th, contingent on their review of the single. Availability of that single was critical to getting any potential visit on rock television, and it simply wasn't available. Nor was the group's updated bio, and Ida was being pressured to get it completed. On August the 10th, Bill advised Bob Ezrin of additional potential actors for the narrator Ancient of Days roles. The list included those signed with Kiss's booking agency, ICM, including Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Victor Borg, Burt Lancaster, and others. Charlton Heston made a secondary list. Finding the right voice was one matter. Finding the right voice with availability and willingness, with unclear scheduling, was another. On August the 13th, 1981, Bill Aucoin advised Howard Marks and Roseanne Shelnut that Bob and the band members had suggested an album title, music from The Elder. approaching the songwriting, the goal was to create not a soundtrack, but a conceptual album that would precede a movie to introduce the story's basic plot, primary characters, and general themes. Any potential movie could be for theatrical release or television. The aftermath of the conceptual shift is clearly indicative that the creative process had diverted into writing and sourcing material and co-writers specifically, with the general major plot elements being refined from Gene's initial idea. In the creators' workshops, it was deemed wholly unimportant to create a consistent album or one that told a functionally linear story. The concept was reduced to simply targeting basic themes such as just a kid, check, something to do about the ancients, check, an antagonist who is defined inconsistently, starting as a dragon and then disappearing from the treatment wholly. As the treatment noted, beyond these essential subjects, it is not crucial to the album to follow the actual script in a literal fashion. It is only important that each song relate in some way to the general theme. Story elements can be attached to songs after the fact through the use of sound effects and/or dialogue. And that probably explains why any of the released versions of The Elder seem to be a disjointed hodgepodge of possibilities, not least the repeated attempts to sequence it with some semblance of coherence. But from that treatment, several conceptual song types were recommended, and it seems to have allowed the songwriters the inspiration needed to write to purpose or engage others to assist them. The treatment noted the obvious correlation of plot points with song ideas. So what are some of those musical placeholders? First appearing is Just a Kid. It needed to be a ballad and is noted as an Annie-type soliloquy. In a later part of the treatment, it gains its more appropriate title, Just a Boy. In the treatment, it aligned thematically with the boy's perception of things that need doing, grand things that are probably out of reach because he's too young to be sailing, metaphorically. When realized musically, it starts with grand 12-string guitar chords. Additional metaphors flow with an abundance of endless water in the resulting song. Not only does the boy question who steers the ship through the stormy sea, which can be interpreted on so many levels, it infuses the importance of hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Here, all the boy's fears are fully illustrated. Fears of being adrift and lost without guidance or purpose. Fear of failing, self-doubt under the gaze of others. Fear of being the one. Transitioning from B minor on the verse to E major on the chorus, the transition is designed to be jarring, shifting with the emotional undertone of the lyric. Bob's musical theory background is clearly in play here. The B minor key is a useful device for the questioning and doubting tone of these verses, whereas E major is almost contradictory in its use on the chorus. But as Bob might say, it's certainly glorious.
It's glorious. It really is glorious.
Bob and Paul worked extensively woodshedding the song in a small studio in Aurora, Ontario, and extensive work went into both refining the arrangement and Paul's vocal delivery. Paul's vocal on the song saw him moving into very dangerous territory, taking on a great challenge and working in a different style than he'd previously done. They experimented with an assortment of embellishments from piano to organ, different guitar styles to illustrate both setting, tone, and purpose suitably. The song was deemed to be very important, the keystone of the story in some ways, and not necessarily in the linear scope, but within the scope and magnitude of what it represented. It was the opening salvo for the grandiose artistic statement Kiss intended to make, and the story's opening chapter.
Who steers the ship through the stormy sea? If hope is lost and so are we. While some I search for one to guide us, some are staring at me. But I'm no hero, though I wish I could be. For I am just a boy, too
point of personal bias, it is impossible not to pause for a moment in celebration of the exquisite, yet economical guitar solo performed by Paul Stanley, an overall highlight from the album for tastefulness and execution. Some song suggestions are more generically defined: a literal love theme from Kiss, an elder song, a dragon song. What the dragon is never actually revealed in the treatment available, and may be buried in other unavailable story and plot notes. The notes again stress the point that it was only important for the songs to relate in some way to the general theme. The treatment also notes that a grand finale with lavish orchestration would be essential. These parameters allow for liberation from the narrow confines of a strict concept, something possibly mandatory for the concept in the form available for us to critique. Providing balance and harmony in the culminating bookend is mirrored in Ezrin fashion with the oral tapestry used to open the album, a mysterious sonic prelude that hints at things to come. In the case of Fanfare, it is more cerebral than a similar device employed to open Destroyer. Gene's notes for the treatment define the Elder's intro. Bells, inside a castle, with a chant representing secrecy. In fact, the chanting is mentioned so often throughout the treatment that one might suppose that it was going to be a given at some point during the album. After all, chanting is serious business, and mysterious. Those elements lend themselves to the Ezrin tactical toolbox in full deployment for the album opening. They simply beg a grandiose execution, a great artistic statement, something important. Therefore, Fanfare opens with the light breeze of possibilities as wind chimes sparkle gently, providing a magical aura. Far off in the distance, we can hear a train horn. Ironic happenstance of recording the chimes at Ace's home studio. The tranquility is broken with the 5-note refrain, which the American Symphony Orchestra built dynamically into a full fanfare, the audio exclamation to illustrate the arrival and commencement of something important. It sets the tone for the album to communicate an event of importance and ceremony.
Cannot be serious!
Kiss was serious. And while it may have been intended to be a glorious device mismatched with a comic book rock band, it may have come across as absurd and pompous. This was Kiss stepping way out of their station, way out of their comfort zone. Rather than thumbing their noses at critics and elites, this was pouring chum in the water and baiting the listener. The mood is further emphasized by a full orchestral crescendo that culminates in a heraldic announcement that the main feature is about to begin, following a brief message from chanting monks, or something similar. Engineer Greg Hanks had been scheduled to perform studio setup at Ace in the Hole Studios on July the 31st, and recording was scheduled to commence on August the 3rd. Rentals from SIR indicate full investment in a conceptual realm. Fender Rhodes, a Yamaha YC45 organ with Leslie, a percussion box, orchestra bells, 42-inch gong, and a set of wind chimes. Bob also requested an ARP quadra-synthesizer in place of his preferred but unavailable synclavier. Bob was clearly ready to roll tape, requesting from AMI to arrange for the purchase of some 30 reels of primary Scotch 250 2-inch and 20 quarter-inch size on 10-inch reels. The script treatment suggests separate songs for both the Ancient and the Dragon. We'll try and decipher those shortly. Sequentially, the treatment notes the importance of the song that represents "When will something happen to me?" As the script notes, Morpheus is aware of the effect he has on Joshua, and in fact is guiding him through fantasy to the things he must know for the task he will be led to perform. Here the magical comes into play, with Joshua ascribed clairvoyance, a talent that scares him. Fittingly, the song Odyssey follows in the track sequence to fit the expression of this theme, albeit wholly externally sourced from writer Tony Powers. Musically, its complexity mirrors the theme, and as Tony told Tim McFate for KissFAQ's Novelder feature in 2012, it was just the thought that there are many times that exist in the same time, and everything, past, present, future, happens at the same time, and what we consider to be time is an illusion. I guess I was just dwelling and thinking on that. I'm pretty sure it just started with the very first line of the song, "From a far-off galaxy, I hear you calling me." It just came quickly after that, and the lyrics to the chorus always knock me out. I just loved it. In that sense, it was a perfect fit, a catch-all for the theme, along with being a spectacular composition in its own right. Unfortunately, following the falsetto on Just a Boy, Paul's out-of-character vocal would have confused many a listener.
There's a song in the silence, weaving in and out of time.
It was less rock and oh so serious. A Broadway expression of something far grander than those fuck me suck me songs Kiss had forsaken. Still, objectively, it's a gorgeous vocal, and very brave. This was not the usual 1-2 punch to open a Kiss album. Here Paul Stanley was walking a tightrope and treading a line between the brave and the vulnerable, and perhaps also the foolish. He was putting himself so far out on the line and taking the greatest risks as the group's leading voice. For Kiss's PR, the meaning of the song was reduced to it representing the hero's knowledge, haunted by the knowledge that there is something greater than oneself involved. Another song theme, First Love, is clearly directed at an obvious treatment plot moment, the boy's love interest when smitten with one Melody Vandermeer, daughter of a key character, Claire, a major newspaper owner. The version of the song on Gene's Vault is probably not the 1970s demo, but if anything close, then the sentiment is clear. Whatever the case, the song was the first written by Gene on piano, reusing some of the melody from Now That You're Gone. Gene also considered Now That You're Gone as a potential song for use in some manner. In the elder context, it relates to the orphan's sense of abandonment, but Gene may have seen some parallels between the boy and his own youth. Now that you're gone, I'll go on living just the same. It's cerebrally touching within that context. The original form dated from 1977 when it emerged from a collaboration with Bob Kulick. As Bob recounted in Ultimate Classic Rock, it was more of an ELO Beatles song than it was a Kiss song. But that sort of thing was also very Gene. At this point in the treatment, a reprise of Just a Boy is noted, specifically to again call into question the boy's readiness for the task at hand. This device certainly arrives, as will be noted shortly. The next theme is The Next Step, a song idea where the boy is initiated into the Order of the Rose. On the album, 2 songs represents this path, first with Under the Rose offering a challenge to the boy of both his sincerity and commitment to the task, culminating with The Oath, a celebration of the consummation of the boy's resolve to surrender to his fate. Possibly the most up-tempo of the album's songs, it blended multiple Paul vocal styles to deliver the crescendo worthy of a key plot point. But it certainly wouldn't be fair to suggest that The Oath was the only successful song aligning with plot elements. After that, the story treatment is rapidly driven to completion with no further suggestions offered for potential songs. Another document notes several other potential Gene songs for use. Some of these have been noted. Most are clearly an attempt to recycle older material such as Dreamer.
Alas, she was but a dream, nothing but quiet, and she was my serenity. Somewhere inside me, I'll make love to her tonight, and when she's beside me, the love we make is oh so right. I'm nothing but a dreamer. I almost believed her. But I'd love to see her one more time. She was my life.
One can easily make several connections to characters and themes in the script treatment. This song had been demoed under that title in 1975 or 76, and combined elements of another recording dating back to 1970, When I Awoke, with another lyrical idea, Something of a Dream. Gene had written the song in his kitchen on a 12-string guitar before recording a rudimentary demo in the studio on his own. The context for its potential consideration is not explained, but the yearning chorus on that song could easily slot into a love interest within the concept, as could the title. Those notes also suggest that only the verse on Gene's Only You demo were considered usable, with the chorus missing.
Only you can possess me. I need your love day and night. Only you can deliver me. I need your love, I can't deny. Only you can deceive me. I love you more than I can say, yeah. Only you can complete me. I need your love every day.
It provides another direct link to a major theme within the story, but on the notes the context seems backward, with Gene suggesting that it is the boy speaking to the elder, telling them that it is they who have the answer. Perhaps the ambiguity is deliberate, and the album publicity suggests it is the elder's caution to the boy. The musical basis for the song had been rooted in the chords of an ancient Simmons composition, Eskimo Sun, written around 1970, and one that had been performed live by Wicked Lester's precursor, Rainbow. The 1979 version had been among song ideas pitched to Vinnie Poncia for potential use on the Unmasked album. At that time, the song was very much fully formed, if not fully arranged. It was more of a yearning love song with a throaty Gene vocal, with heavier instrumentation that included piano flourishes similar to Bruce Forster on Nothing to Lose. Only the title and verse melody survived the transition. It was combined with the verse music from another demo, Sweet Temptation, during the Elder transformation. It is notable that the aggressive chordings is a useful device to shift the underlying mood of the song. Elements of the song are most noticeable on the breakdown. Gene suggested in his vault liner notes that Ezrin was responsible for the combination, while Gene still retained sole writing credit. On the album form, Paul sings the boy's inner conflict section that precedes a Just a Boy reprise during the tumultuous outro section. Derivative of Only You, the song called Am I Losing My Mind had been demoed in 1980. The chorus was changed, reflecting its new title, though other elements were retained in a transformative state. The style of the backing music changed from the acoustic to electric fuzz guitar.
Am I losing my mind? One touch of your love, one look at your face. Am I losing my mind? Only you can deliver me.
Gene's willingness to recycle anything was certainly not laziness, but trying to find a home or use for previously discarded or disjointed ideas. He may have seen this title as potentially useful within the amazing framework of the story, the boy's special skills scaring himself. And as with the case with several song titles noted, the parallels may simply have ended with the title, particularly for a song so musically bouncy. For use on The Elder, it may have been more a matter of Gene trying to potentially align anything unused in his catalog with a title or a plot element or a theme. Another potential Bob Kulick co-write was also considered, with Silly Boy, a gender flip on the May Phase 1 studio recording. In Gene's notes, the song potentially relates to a dialogue between Morpheus and Joshua. It may well be connected with Tell It to a Fool, included on the Kiss Creatures of the Night Super Deluxe Edition in 2022. An unnamed song is described as Eric's tune, and is noted as a potential backing for some part of the quest. If Gene was referencing Eric is better than Anton from the Phase 1 sessions, without the drum solo, then it aligns with statements from band members about trying to find a use for that instrumental during the Elder sessions. Finally, Seeing is Believing, which seems suitably flexible for various elements within this fairy tale, notably with dialogue from Morpheus. It was another song that likely resulted from a collaboration with Bob Kulick and Pepe Castro the previous year. It was in a more hard rock vein. By August the 14th, it's clear that several of the songs considered for the album had been written. Gene had advised attorney Stuart Silfen that Tony Powers, Lou Reed, Eric, and Bob had co-writing credits for material that would be used on the album. Stuart requested clarity from Bill regarding the requisite songwriting contracts, which he wanted buttoned up prior to the completion of the album. That was another aspect of the business of the contractual obligation. At the same time, McCoy was amping up pressure on Bob Ezrin, telling him in an August 6th memo that Kiss will be unable to appear on any rock TV shows in Europe until those shows have had a chance to preview the upcoming single. Clearly, reading between the lines, McCoy was saying, "Please, can we have a single? Now?"
Well, we're waiting.
One of the collaborations, A World Without Heroes, evolved out of a song idea that Paul had abandoned. Recorded during the May Phase 1 sessions as Every Little Bit of Your Heart, Paul clearly had some melodic idea for the structure of a potential ballad. It was also apparent from rehearsals for those sessions that he had started attempting to flesh out potential lyrics. It may have been the case where he hadn't yet latched on to enough of a perspective to complete the song. Gene, however, liked the melody Paul had created, though not the initial attempt at lyrics. Instead, he and Bob took parts of the idea and reworked it. Most noticeable would be the original bass line and the initial minute of the song. Bob had clearly hit on the potential for the song even before The Elder became the theme around the construction of the songs. During those Phase 1 sessions, he had accompanied the group, recording a lilting piano track that clearly had grander melodic potential. It magnified a bass only hinted at on the available recordings from rehearsal sessions. Lyrics, however, remained a problem, and Gene drew inspiration from some ideas that Lou Reed had written down on a scrap of paper. Bob recalled approaching Lou to PBS in 1997, stating, "I would call Lou and say, 'Hey Lou, I've got this really wacky project like Kiss, for example, and it's a great story. It's very filmic. Would you help me out with lyrics?' And each time I asked him, he said yes." Ezrin had brought Lou in to help out with Nils Lofgren's album in 1979. Bob recalled Lou's headspace at the time of the Kiss project to Gary Graff for Ultimate Classic Rock. "He came up to my farm in King City, Ontario to do some writing on the project. He'd just taken a new path in life and had started studying Tai Chi. And I remember the then very odd scene of Lou out on the lawn by our pond in the misty early morning, practicing parting the horse's mane." In Tai Chi, that movement is representative of duality, with it splitting energy in opposite directions and the hands moving up and down or forward and backwards with fluidity. The movement is easily transposed into the musical realm of A World Without Heroes. From that perspective, it connects with the base premise of the Elder story, the duality of the universe distilled down to good versus evil. Bob's connection with the poetic wordsmith made him a perfect collaborator, or at least a well to draw ideas and lyrical inspiration from. From Lou's random ideas came the title, a starting point into wordplay that was more thoughtful than transgressive. Lou's fingerprints run throughout the piece, judging by his 25% songwriting split. Lyrics such as "Like a Bell That Never Rings" run the gamut of simile, metaphor, and paradox. Though the abundance of these might cross over into the cliched realm in typical Kiss over-the-top manner. Some may simply be weak facsimiles of what Gene or Bob thought Lou would say, and if so, more power to them for trying. The song represented a melancholic reaction to the world in turbulence, a deep introspection of the need for a hero to emerge to challenge what had become the status quo. And the efforts would be rewarded with the song becoming the sole US single issued to support the album, when other markets went with the more obvious Oath or I. Musically, Paul didn't abandon the song either, and his exquisite guitar solo was inspired by what he thought Bob Kulick would have conjured. Sample artwork for the abandoned Kiss Exposed 2 video cassette in 1992 suggested a version of the song exists with a Lou Reed vocal. Another unused lyrical piece from Lou Reed was Morpheus Descending. It purportedly goes,
Give us a verdict now. Now is the hour of decision. Don't be slow when you go, unless you can quickly show to us a boy prepared to be our hero. Morpheus descending from the spirit, Morpheus descending to our court. Morpheus, do send to us a hero, and Morpheus, we thank you very much.
Clearly with Silly Girl, Silly Boy, Tell It to a Fool, and Eric's tune, more of Kiss's abandoned May 1981 recordings were considered for use on the Elder. Other ideas clearly did transfer across the paradigm shift. It's possible the backing track for the musically straightforward Dark Light was recorded at Ace in the Hole on August the 12th. Again, Lou Reed was leveraged to transform Ace and Anton's decent musical composition. And the title screams parallels with Velvet Underground's White Light, White Heat. October the 26th royalty splits assign Lou Reed a whopping 33% contribution share, indicative of the importance and substance of that contribution, with Ace and Gene sharing 23.5% and Anton retaining the remaining 20%. That was different to an earlier credit ascribed to only Ace and Lou. The co-opting of the song served several purposes, not least having Fraley more obviously involved in a project he didn't wholly support. Additionally, its hard rock character was more in line with the type of sound expected from the group, providing some hard rock credibility buried within that conceptual blur. And conceptually, it was representative of the fear and dread being caused by the powers of chaos and destruction who revel in disorder. The song, musically at least, doesn't vary much from earlier in the year, as noticed in the previous episodes, as Don't Run it was in existence in some form early enough to be mentioned in the Kiss Army newsletter in April. As that newsletter noted, Kiss excitement runs high in this tune. Multiple takes of Escape from the Island were recorded between August the 14th and 16th. Like Just a Boy, work tapes exist of Eric, Ace, and Bob woodshedding the jam into its final form prior to the album sessions, with its then working title of The Chase. When it came time for the songwriting split, Ace and Bob each took 40%, leaving the remainder for Eric. It wasn't the only jam worked on, and Ace and Eric clearly had worked on other ideas together during the year. One additional untitled jam appeared at the end of one recording reel, which Ace also attempted to define a vocal melody and lyric for. He tried to apply one of the early themes, but was unsuccessful, and the idea doesn't appear to have gained further traction. As for Escape from the Island, the song would come and go from the assortment of track sequences prior to the album release, and was left off the Japanese release, which used the original finalized sequence rather than the rapidly assembled resequencing requested by Polygram in late October. In Japan, the song was included as a B-side on the Oath single, and on the Kiss Killers compilation the following year. As far as the Elder treatment goes, the track aligns with the scene where Joshua flees from Gibson Island after triggering alarms while discovering that the Secretary of State and a military figure are meeting secretly with the President. In the treatment, it was marked with the suggestion, "All hell's breaking loose." On its own, that suggestion is one of the most interesting in the treatment, even though it wasn't realized in any form, at least until 1983. It's interesting that the group would breathe fresh life into a song with such toxic roots so soon afterwards, when the wounds of the failed experiment were still raw. Certainly other ideas born and abandoned during this time continued to be rejected during succeeding years. Even more curious is the final song idea listed on a separate sheet of potential Gene songs for use, or recycling. It is the undefined Back on the Street. It is ironic that the song of the same title would be the very first song that one Vincent Cusano worked with Kiss on in 1982. Perhaps the Elder sent him to save the group. Multiple takes of Mr. Blackwell were recorded on August the 17th with Rick Hart Engineering. In one odd plot synopsis for the Elder, the Mr. Blackwell character is a Washington, D.C. power broker who turns out to be the story's villain and the worldly representative of the powers of darkness. In the available script treatment, he is presumed to be the antagonist who is holding hostage the president and controlling his double. This seems quite different than the character Gene and Lou Reed wrote into the song, a character who seems an almost Dr. Jekyll Quasimodo-ish hybrid in an almost God of Thunder vein. The songwriting was split evenly between the pair. More of Reed's dualistic writing seems to be coming into play, somewhat indicative of the character, black or dark, plus well, as in a dark well or a source of evil or malice threatening the world. Musically, the bass line was inspired by something recorded earlier in the year, Feel Like Heaven, and Gene later told Ken Sharp, "The bass riff from Feel Like Heaven inspired the bass riff in Mr. Blackwell, a song on the Elder, that kind of lazy, slimy bass line based around the key of E." Join me for the next episode of Audio Odyssey, where we'll conclude the creation of the album and start looking at the press campaign used to promote the album and the conflict with the record label and the listening public.